buddy, put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Oh, yeah, across the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where you'll find links to the audio-only stream. You'll find links to the podcasts available on iTunes, Google Play, CastBox, Stitcher, and, of course, Spotify. And you'll find links to our social media sites where we simulcast the radio show every morning on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Good morning and welcome to the program. It is the Michael Dukes Show, and we are also broadcasting live, of course, across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning. How are you? It's Monday. Did you have a good weekend? Was it recuperative? Do you feel great about it? Are you ready just to, or are you laying in bed staring at the ceiling wondering why you're listening to this guy so early in the morning, ready to go? I know. It's one of those things, but it is Monday and the snow is melting, and I think spring has finally sprung. I think it is finally sprung. And we're ready to go. I mean, I hate to say anything at this point. I'm thinking like potentially if I say anything, there might be snow later this afternoon. You know what I mean? I'm not excited about it, but that's okay. Rain last night, rain up in the interior. I gotta say, I'm happy. I'm happy. Half my yard is uncovered, and maybe, just maybe, we'll start seeing some greening up around the state of Alaska. It is May Day, 1st of May, and we're ready to dive into it. It's that start of I used to think of May as the start of the summer season. You know what I mean? It was just like, ooh, I'm just ready. And now, of course, you just never know. I guess this is the global warming, global cooling, global warming and cooling, whatever it is. Climate change, that's what they call it, because they can't decide if it's warming or cooling, whichever fits the narrative better. That's why they just started calling it climate change. It's good. It's all good. So anyway, today is Monday, and we have got we got a great guest coming up here in just a few minutes. We're actually going to be talking with Emma Camp, who is an assistant editor over at Reason Magazine, and she is quite. I like what she writes over at Reason. She does a bunch of stuff over there, but talks a lot about college and education and things like this. And so, although it's not Montalbano Monday, where we normally, we get a chance to talk to Sarah Montalbano about statewide educational issues, Emma is coming on. She put out a piece here, I guess it was last week, and it was so good. I've never interviewed Emma before, but I have followed her work and really enjoyed a lot of the things that she writes about. But she wrote a piece and it was a video piece over at Reason Magazine. And the title of it was "Fewer People Are Going to College, and Here's Why That's a Good Thing," which is so antithetical to what the narrative is in pretty much everywhere these days. But it lines up with what I've been talking about for quite a while, which is that college is not a necessity for success in America. Not only do we have a whole ton of people who have become multi-gazillionaires just because they innovated and they were entrepreneurs and they did some did some different things, but we're actually seeing that some indications that it's just not the end all and be all that many people have been told over the course of years. So we're going to talk about that with Emma Camp here in just a few moments and get her take, a hot take on it, and be discussing that. There's some headlines from around the state. I don't know exactly what's going on in some areas. We've got some opportunities for public testimony today. We're going to talk about that. This is where the steam really starts to pick up. We are officially 17 days away from the official end of this legislative session. And this is where things kind of get hot and heavy throughout the legislature as they try and squeeze in as much as they can near the end. We're also got some Al Gross is back in the news. I mean, Al Gross. I don't know why, but he's back in the news. There's also a new initiative afoot to try and get more Alaskans connected to the internet, which, I have a solution for this, but, some people are definitely not going to like it. The Senate has passed a new energy bill, which it's a renewable energy program. We're going to talk about that. Here it is. Apparently, the Senate has gone ahead and moved their defined benefits expansion legislation, which had been stuck in Labor and Commerce. And Suzanne Downing is saying this is all due to the fact that for some reason, the state director of Americans for Prosperity, Bernadette Wilson, was let go by the organization with apparently no explanation. I guess we'll start there this morning. Wilson has been working hard to try and prevent the defined benefits program from moving anywhere. And she, in fact, had, I guess, about 30 people down in Juneau here last month trying to kill the legislation and talk up some of the other priorities that are going on. The Americans for Prosperity were working on and found to be important. On the other side of the coin, you had the AFL-CIO who were fighting to restore the defined benefits program, which cost us a lot of money in the long run. SB 88, which was the bill that was stuck in Labor and Commerce, has 11 co-sponsors. But Wilson and AFP and all the volunteers were a force to be reckoned with, apparently. Again, no one knows why suddenly Americans for Prosperity decided to part ways with Wilson. According to insiders, and this is being reported by Suzanne Downing over at Must Read, according to insiders, someone got to the group's leadership. Now, I don't know how would you get to the group's leadership in a overtly conservative organization. I just don't know. It seems like there's some smoke and mirrors here and some innuendo that somehow, somebody was twirling their mustache in the back and they said that Bernadette Wilson's got to go. I don't know why. SB 88 is going to go to Senate Finance now, which is the last stop before being scheduled for a vote on the floor. Interestingly enough, we haven't really seen any of the monetary components of this. We've been assured by many of the proponents that this will not only this could make money. They haven't said that quite yet, but that's what they're saying. Although we know from historicals and in fact, the folks at Reason Magazine had two people testify in front of the Senate about this. where they pointed out that every defined benefits program known to man is more costly and has a lot of downsides. And, we not like we didn't know that to begin with. Now, it's unlikely that the bill is going to go anywhere once it hits the House. The House is not so far shown any favor for it. And quite honestly, they've got no time. They've just got no time to get through this. Of course, the proponents of the bill say it will help the recruitment and retention of state employees and teachers, but this is just going to be costly. Alaska's previous defined benefits retirements program was abolished back in 2006, and we still, I don't know where Downing got this number. She says the state still has over $1 billion in owed payments on that defined benefits plan 17 years later, unless that's just the accruement of the plan, because we still have an unfunded liability of over $6 billion. It's not just what we owe to the plan for payments. It's because when they killed it in 2006, it had almost a $13 billion unfunded liability. 13 billion. So they have whittled it down over 17 years down to just under $7 billion in unfunded liability. And now they want to add more to it. So I don't know. Senator Rob Myers is in the chat room, and he says, according to some of my colleagues, they were going to move the defined benefits bill 2 weeks ago. They didn't because legal was taking too long to put together the committee substitute. Well, again, so this might be coinkydink more than it's coincidence for those of you who don't know. It might just be coincidence, the fact that Bernadette Wilson got axed at the same time that's going. I mean, who knows? Who knows? I don't think it's a big conspiracy personally, but I'm not, again, I guess I don't have a big fancy website with a bunch of listeners or readers every day to be able to do it. I think that that's much ado about nothing, but interesting that they did move it out. Again, still no fiscal note on any of that stuff, which concerns me for a plan that purportedly is going to, who is it? Jesse Keel and, somebody else was like, oh yeah, this will save us money in the long run. This will save us money how on God's green earth do you think that this is going to save you money? We couldn't get it right the first time, and now we're still paying for that, and you want to add to that hot mess right now. I think that that's problematic, to say the least. But the good news is it's not going to go anywhere this year. Maybe, just maybe, somebody can kill it on the other side. This is one of the two things that they really wanted to get past. This and the kids head per student BSA. There you go, BSA, base student allocation. All right, well, we're getting ready to go. We're going to be talking with Emma Camp from Reason Magazine. She's going to be joining us in a few minutes. I'm looking forward to it. Again, her latest piece, which I have linked in the chat room, fewer people are going to college. And here's why that's a good thing. The time and money spent on college can often be used more productively. She's going to talk with us about that, defend that position. And I'm looking forward to seeing what she has to say. That's all directly ahead. Emma Camp from Reason Magazine up next. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the commercial break right now, getting ready to spin things up with our guest, Emma Camp from Reason Magazine. I see that she is floating quietly in the green room, ready to jump in, and she's all good. She's all good. She's got it going on. We're going to check in with her here in just 1 second. First, let me spin through the comments real quick to see what fresh hell shall this Jerica, what is going on here? What fresh hell shall this wing bring upon us? I don't know. That's a negative attitude to have. It'll always be a used hell. It'll never be a fresh hell. There's nothing new under the sun. Come on. I can see my lawn. Yes, finally, I can too. It's a 2-foot circle of grass. All right, I'm just going through it real quick. Floors, blah, 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 blah. Good Lord. Here we going. Yeah, no, I believe I cannot find a connection between Bernadette Wilson from Americans for Prosperity getting booted and the passage of the bill. I just think I just think it's coincidental. I think it's much ado about nothing, but we'll touch on that maybe an hour or two here this morning. All right, look, I'm done with that. I don't want to make Emma wait any longer than she possibly has to. Let's go over here to the screen, and we will bring her on board and say good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
You know, it's just another beautiful day in paradise. It's a blistery 38 degrees here, and I can actually see some grass coming through on my lawn, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. So I appreciate it. We've had a rough winter. As one of the hobbits said, how about second winter or third winter or fourth? We just can't get away from the damn thing. Well, I appreciate you coming on board, and thank you so much. I have been following your work over at Reason for quite a while and enjoying almost everything that you write. But this piece really spoke to me because I'll be honest with you, I've been saying a lot of these things for a long time. Now, I are a high school graduate with 1 semester of college, and that was all it took for me to go, wait a second, this just doesn't seem like this is going to fulfill all my dreams and do all the things that I wanted to do. And so I went on to be fairly successful in my chosen field. But I've seen so many kids just get tripped up by mom and dad going, you won't be successful if you don't go to college and you don't do, and yet you hold up different, examples of, Bill Gates. And I mean, all these other guys that, are multi-gazillionaires who many of whom didn't ever finish college before they became successful, may have gone back later, but it's just an interesting thing. So I love your take on it, and I love how you went through this, and I'd like to break it down and kind of go over that with you. So if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. Tell us a little bit about we got about a minute and a half here. Give me the 60-second synopsis on Emma Camp coming to Reason Magazine and how that's been. And this is something were you aiming at this, or what was going on?
Becoming a journalist was definitely kind of a right place, right time thing for me. I actually thought I was going to go into a philosophy PhD program. So writing about college, I was going to go on maximum college. But sort of one thing led to another. And I realized that, like, as much as I love Plato, I actually don't want to spend another 8 years reading philosophy.
Right. Yeah.
And that the kind of things I was actually interested in writing about, you could do much better as an opinion journalist. So I applied to a bunch of journalism jobs, and I was very lucky and got the one at Reason. And I've had a great time there so far. I've been able to write about the things that interest me, write longer pieces, write shorter pieces, and do stuff like this. So
right.
It's been a great time.
It's very cool. I too love Play-Doh, the edible kind. So it's fine. Don't worry about that. It'll be no, but I can see that you've got an education, you got a philosophy degree and an English degree. Now what am I going to do with these great degrees? I guess you go back to teaching, or that's part. We're going to talk about that here this morning as we go through. All right, ding means we got to jump back into it. Folks, please like and share the show, like and follow the show page, do all that stuff. Go out and read Emma's column at Reason Magazine. Well, you could save it till after the show because there's a video that you'll want to watch too. So, but we'll be back to that. Hold the line. Let's get ready to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Let's do it right now. Here we go.
public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke show.
Pain in the what? That doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right at all. Welcome back. It is the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Jumping into it with our guest for today, Emma Camp from Reason Magazine. Emma has previously worked at the New York Times, Real Clear Policy and Persuasion, and she was awarded the Exceptional Student Award at the Heterodox Academy Open Inquiry Awards, which is fancy. I can't even spell heterodox. You know what? I can't even say it. Emma is over there at Reason Magazine, and she's written a lot. Specifically, she writes quite a bit about colleges because she just came out of college here not too long ago. So she's closest to the subject. And her most recent piece is called Fewer People Are Going to College. And here's why that's a good thing, which, again, shocking for many people to hear. But I mean, it's what I've been preaching for the last 15 years because I believe that is absolutely true. Emma Camp joins us right now. Good morning, Emma.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on board and joining us. It's just you, me, and several thousand Alaskans wondering why it's still so cold outside, but you're going to hear to keep them warm here this morning on this. Emma, let's talk about overall. I mean, we all know that with COVID and everything else, there was a decline, in schools, both K-12, post-secondary, the whole deal, which I guess was to be expected. But surprisingly, the enrollment in college was not started by COVID. I mean, this has been going on for quite a while, that there's been a decline in what's happening in enrollment.
Yeah, there's been a decline really since the Great Recession started in 2008. It kind of leveled off a bit. And then obviously with COVID, there was a huge drop. That was very much to be expected. A lot of people took gap years, for example. But then even after that first main year of COVID, it kept dropping. It seems like it's maybe starting to recover, but we still had this massive continuing drop. And there's a lot of reasons to think that's a good thing. One of the main ones for me is that if you look at just using one metric, the ACT, which is one of the main standardized tests that people take to go to college, 75% of ACT test takers were not prepared for college, basically, on these metrics that the people who run the ACT use. Right. And that's really shocking. It's probably more American high school students than that aren't prepared, because some states require the ACT for graduation. Some, in a state like Maine, only 6% of students take it, and those are the really serious students. So right. Even though 75% of ACT test takers aren't prepared for college, almost 2/3 of American high school students do enroll in college. And so you have a situation where we actually have a really high college dropout rate, because so many kids are told you must go to college, and because a lot of schools are worried about closing. They accept everybody, even if they're just completely academically incapable of succeeding in a 4-year degree. And so you have these people who take on massive amounts of debt and then end up dropping out and having nothing to show for it. And they would have just been better off never going to college in the first place.
Well, it's astonishing because for me, those numbers right there are a total, I know we're talking about college, but are a total indictment of our K through 12 system.
We have absolutely.
Here. I mean, it's astonishing. So 3/4 are not college ready. Anecdotally, we interviewed somebody who worked for the University of Alaska here. This is on the program probably 12, 15 years ago. And the guy didn't want me to use his name, voice changer, the whole deal. He's like, he goes, I help craft this remedial math courses, because he goes, most of the kids coming out of the local high schools can't take a 100 level math course because they didn't get, I mean, this was 15 years ago. I mean, it's insane. We are spending more, and in the state of Alaska specifically, we're spending more than almost any other state on a per student basis, and they can't even get to 100 level math, or in your case, they're not ready for the rest of college. Something's fundamentally broken here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could go on and on about the problems of the K-12 education system. Another good metric is that 2/3 of fourth graders can barely read. And if you can't read, you can't really do pretty much anything else. And so we're really failing a lot of kids. And then it's setting them up for these failures later in life. But, I also think the idea that everyone should go to college is bad. That's just not how academic ability works, but it's also just not how other countries do this kind of thing. Like I
Right.
have family members that live in the Netherlands, and way fewer kids actually go to university there. There's a lot more vocational programs, and that's better for so many people. And a lot of jobs just simply shouldn't require a college degree. I don't think journalism should require a college degree. As much as I enjoyed, toiling away, reading Plato and Shakespeare for my English and philosophy degrees, I use them not at all in my current job. And I would have been just as good going right out of high school and learning on the job, which is what I'm doing now, learning like how to take quotes, how to do interviews, how to write a story, all of those things you don't need a college degree to do. And the fact that there are so many jobs that absolutely require a college degree and sometimes, require some kind of journalism master's degree, it's just encouraging people to go into obscene amounts of debt to kind of artificially lower the supply.
Right. And this is a generational thing. Because I'm 53. I know I look older, but I'm 53. But I remember my mom and my dad especially was like, oh, you got to go to college. You got to go to college. If you won't be successful if you don't go to college, kind of thing. And that's been going on. That mantra has been pumped. From the late 50s, it started, to where that was what it is. And it has created this behemoth where you have this cyclic feedback loop between, colleges and states and monies and federal government monies and everything else pumping back into it. And it's created this kind of obscene, bloated thing that just is looking for bodies. That's why they don't refuse anybody, even if you fail the ACT, is because they need that money. It's become this money monster more than anything else.
Oh, absolutely. And it is going to become a worse problem because there was a big birth rate drop after the Great Recession. And so right around, in about 4 years from now, when you get the kids who were born in 2008, there's already been a birth rate decline. So colleges have fewer students every year, a lot of times, especially smaller liberal arts colleges or smaller state colleges. Like schools like Harvard are not having this problem. But around 2008, there's going to be this huge drop off. And we're already having a lot of small colleges close. It's going to get even worse, and these schools are going to be even more desperate for bodies. And it's going to be even worse for the students who really should be told, like, maybe you should do a trade and have like a good middle-class life without a bunch of debt. And instead they're shunted into a school where they have to do all of these remedial classes and, rack up all this debt for something that they never
cost money. Yeah,
place.
remedial classes, which cost money before you even actually get to the meat and potatoes of
right,
the
exactly. So you have these kids that are, sometimes if they actually did graduate, it would take them 7 or 8 years. And that's just not tenable for almost all people.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is, again, this is the lie that we've been told. And I have to laugh because you have a philosophy and an English degree, and you're working in a field that really doesn't require either one of those. I saw a statistic 20 years ago that said 80% of the people who graduate from college never get a job in their field of study. 80%. That was a stat from 20 years ago. And I don't know what it is today, but that one always stuck with me. And I said, when I heard that stat, I said, well, that teaches me one thing, that really they didn't care what your degree was. They just wanted to see if you could hang with it. And you talk about that. It's almost like it's a virtue signaling thing now, that they just want to see that you can actually stick with it, get up, go to class, do what you're told, do all those kind of things. That's really what college has become in America today, it seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an economist named Brian Kaplan who calls college a signaling mechanism, and it's exactly that. It's, can you do your homework? Can you show up on time? And like all of those are good traits to have, and they do reflect well on somebody. But the fact that we're asking people to go through all of these years of extra education and possibly tens of thousands of dollars in debt to prove it, when, maybe you should just give them a job, and if they can't show up on time and can't do their work, you can fire them.
Shocking. Maybe you could just, do that. I've seen, of course, I have a lot of friends who are in the trades, and one of them made a comment, and there's actually been several articles recently. I think the Wall Street Journal had one, and I think the New York Times had one about the trades coming up, trades and vocational ed and things like that. And one of my friends said, he goes, look, I looked around me, I saw all the people who were 5, 8, 10 years ahead of me, and I saw the ones who were $100,000 in debt for college. And I saw the ones that joined an apprenticeship program right out of high school, and they were making what these college graduates are going to be making 5 years from now, but without the $100,000 debt. That sounded like a pretty good deal to me. and that's what I decided to do it. And I think that's first of all, we are woefully lacking in employees and labor for trades, right? I mean, that's been a big problem in America for the last decade at least. And I think you're right. I think we've screwed up because we've painted everybody into the picture of you got to have a college degree. All these other guys are never going to make any money. But Mike Rowe and others have shown that, man, if you're in the trades and you are vested and you've made, you've got 8-9 years under your belt, you're making money that most college graduates would salivate at.
Right, absolutely. And it's really a failure again of the K-12 system where they have a bunch of kids who are clearly just not going to even if they are capable of it, just aren't interested in long-term academic study, but going, no, they must go to college. They'll have a terrible life. They don't go to college. We need to squish them into this college box. When instead they could be saying, hey, do you want to do an apprenticeship? You get to work with your hands, right? You get to build things, which a lot of kids are really interested in and would really jump at the opportunity to do. And have been sort of tossing those opportunities aside, and it's only failed the students that they were meant to help.
Yeah. So look, fewer students are going to college now. And that's just a fact. And as you said, as the lack of the birth rate drop continues from the 2008 recession, that's going to just exacerbate the situation. And so these colleges are in a panic because they want the state money, they want the federal money, they want to keep their doors open, but there's just going to not be enough bodies going around. Is that going to help with the competition, or what do you see in this happening right now?
I mean, what I see happening is that a lot of schools, particularly small liberal arts colleges, will close. Some of them might try to stay open in various ways, probably just by bringing their acceptance rate as low as they can, or as high as they can possibly bring it, which will not be good for their long-term graduation rate. And I'm hoping that people are going to start saying, especially as college gets more and more expensive and there's more and more of a conversation about debt, and you're seeing in polling numbers, there are more and more people saying that the amount of debt that you go into to get a college degree isn't worth it. Like, now that we're seeing that sea change and people are going, oh, no, going $100,000 in debt just isn't worth it. I think maybe we'll start to see an increase in the trades. I think also something that's important to note is that we have an aging population. And so there are a lot of jobs you can get with a community college degree, like a 2-year nursing degree, for example, that are in huge demand. Because a lot of these trades, people say like, oh, well, it's only men that are interested in going into them. Well, it's mostly women that are in these 2-year nursing degrees. And they're really helpful because a lot of these jobs are in nursing homes, and more and more people are going to be in nursing homes. And so there are lots of either community college level or, apprenticeship level jobs that are really in high demand, and that a lot of different kinds of people could be interested in. And so I'm really hoping that high schools will start to pushing that, and that parents will also start to be pushing that and realizing that, like, you know what, I don't want to pay for this. My kid doesn't want to do it. And actually you can have the good middle-class life that I want for my child without them getting a 4-year degree.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been an advent over the last 10 years or so of what some people are calling like rocket courses or things like that, where I remember the story of a young lady who came out of high school. She was interested in, computer coding and stuff, and she could have gone to college and did all this, but somebody turned her on to it was like a 10 or 12 week program for coding and programming. And it cost $6,000. But she did that one course, and when she was done after 12 months, they placed her in a job making like $60,000 a year. And within another 18 months, she was making upwards of almost $100,000 a year. And that people, oh, well, that's just a fluke. No, there are programs out there like that are compressed programs, immersion programs that do only one thing. They don't have all the ancillary stuff. They teach you the one thing. It's very short. It's 2, 3, 4 months, and then you go right to work. And maybe that's part of the problem, is that we're so wooed by this whole 4-year college experience, quote unquote, that we forget that this is really about just training people to have a career, and all they need to know is the basics of that. Why do we need all the ancillary stuff?
Right. I mean, honestly, I think one of the best things that could be done for trade school is for somebody to create a trade school that has like a college experience, right? That has dorms that you live in. Maybe it's only a little bit more expensive, but like you learn to weld, but then you also get to go to frat parties. That honestly might convince so many people, because there really is this like romanticization of having like 2 to 4 years to just kind of mess around and delay adulthood that a lot of people are interested in. It's like, well, perhaps there's a way of giving you this while also giving you a job that you will actually want.
Right. Just
who knows if anyone will actually make that.
Just give me your $250,000, which you can pay back over the rest of your life, and we'll give you that college experience.
We'll give it to you.
We'll give you that college experience. Emma Camp is our guest. She's from Reason Magazine. We're going to continue with her here in just a moment. We're coming up on the break. It's got to pay some of those bills. We are capitalists after all. So we're going to be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues with Emma Camp from Reason Magazine. Back with more right after this. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Michael Duke Show /live. If you want to join the chat room right now, you're welcome to. We'll return in just a moment.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, Emma Camp, Reason Magazine, our guest this morning. If you want to, if you would like to ask her a question in the chat room, now's the time to do it. We got Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch going on right now. My daughter, this is what Willie says. My daughter was a 4-year honor roll at Mount Edgecombe, which is Mount Edgecombe is a boarding school here in Alaska, to pay a couple thousand for remedial college courses. I'm going, what the hell? She quit and is looking at trade schools. Well, good. I mean, but that's the thing. It's not unusual for students to have some kind of remedial look just to get into some of the basic college courses, which again, as I said earlier, an indictment on the whole K-12 system. I mean, something is just, you mentioned the European system, Netherlands. And of course, I've talked a little bit about the German system in Germany, which I'm not 100% on board with, because it does slice out some kids early on, but they're deciding in grade school and in junior high school whether or not these kids are being tracked for college or not, right? I mean, they're saying you don't have the aptitude, which I think, again, aptitude can come late, but they are at least not saying that everyone should go to university, everyone should go to college. There are places for people to do the trades, labor, VOTEC, whatever. That's what's going on. We should be looking at that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think tracking in school, while there are some downsides, like you mentioned, the upsides really outbalance them to me. Really being able to give kids the specific kind of instruction that they need. So my understanding, this is really just based on talking to my family members that live there, is that in the Netherlands, I'm sure it's similar to Germany, pretty early on, they put kids in different kinds of schools. So you have, 4 or 5 different levels. Some are very vocational, some are kind of average, some are sort of like you go to a technical university after graduation, which is like where you would do like a nursing degree or like a graphic design degree, like sort of the practical degrees. And then at the very top, where you're like learning Latin and Greek in high school, is where you go if you want to do like a philosophy degree or a physics degree, kind of like the high theoretical stuff. But that's a very small percentage of the kids. But at the end of it, everybody is where they want to be and is looking towards a path where they can have a job that's actually useful for them. And I think putting most of the kids in sort of a vocational track, I think makes really a lot of sense. And it also helps in terms of spending. Like there are lots and lots of reasons why college is cheaper for the consumer in Europe, and we don't need to go into all of them. But like one of them is that they have fewer students as a proportion of the population. Like the government has to pay for fewer kids, right. And I think that's really important to consider.
Well, and the other thing, of course, is government paying for the education overall. I mean, when government got involved and started propping up a lot of these schools and doing that stuff. I mean, the question is, when did it, and government getting involved, of course, has created all kinds of other problems. We're talking about the student debt crisis and everything else. I mean, they created this demand. They created it and they've instituted it, and they're a big part of the problem at this point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look at when the price of college started outpacing inflation and it started getting really insanely expensive, basically tracks exactly with when kind of an unlimited number of federal student loans became available to anybody. And so colleges realized they could charge whatever they want because you can get an infinite number of loans, right? So if the University of Chicago wants to charge $70,000 as the sticker price, I mean, in fairness, almost no one ends up actually paying that. But if a college wanted to do that and somebody wanted to take out that many loans, they could. And because it was this government-run system, there was no sense of looking at the likelihood of paying it back. So I could take out $200,000 in loans to get like a dance therapy degree, right? Which almost certainly I will not be able to pay back that amount of money with my dance therapy degree. But if I was actually going through a bank would say like, no, we don't trust you to pay this back, so we're not going to give it to you. But if I wanted to take out $40,000 to get an engineering degree at, a state university, a bank would probably say, yeah, that's a great idea, right? You will almost certainly be able to pay that back to us because you're getting a practical degree that pays a lot of money.
Right. I mean, look, I'm not anti-college. I mean, I think you need college courses for, engineers, doctors, things that are very specific, physics, philosophy, some of those other things. Teachers, there are some things that need to be taught. But, the fact that everybody goes through it just like an assembly line, we're not all widgets, right? We're not all the same. And some of us just don't have it. Like I said, I went to one semester of college and went, well, this is not for me. And I left. I decided I didn't need, and boy, it still took me 5 or 6 years to pay off that one semester of college, right? I mean, because I got a loan to do it. I mean, that's insane to make it happen. But this is where we're at today. This is the mantra that they keep pushing is get a good job, go to college, you'll be successful. If you don't go to college, you don't get to go to the successful step, which is patently untrue. We know that that's patently untrue. All right. We're just getting ready to rejoin the radio, so let's do that. Emma Camp is our guest. She is an assistant editor over at Reason Magazine, and we're going to continue with her here in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like and share, like and follow. Let's get going. Here we go. Continuing now with Emma Camp, who is an assistant editor over at Reason Magazine. And, she's just recently graduated from college here a year or so ago. And so she's a little bit closer to this than I am. We were just talking about my experience at college was a single semester of me doing the classes and doing everything else and going, well, I just don't think this is for me. I decided to jump out on my own and I'm happy with it. I've been very successful, but that completely flies in the face of what the mantra was and has been for years. What would your suggestion be as somebody who just now, just recently walked out the door with the pigskin on the wall and everything else? What do you, or sheepskin? I'm sorry, pigskin is football, sheepskin is college. What is your suggestion here? Because as you say, fewer people are going to college, and that's a good thing. So what does Emma Camp say, needs to happen? If you were queen for a day, what would you make work here in America?
Well, I think for one, I would invest way more in trade school programs, and I would have a lot of tracking. So if I were queen for a day, I would separate American high school in kind of maybe at least 3 different layers. One is like very much a vocational track. One is sort of a flexible track where you can maybe halfway through high school drop down or drop up a level if you so desire, and you pass a certain number of tests. That sort of is putting kids in vocational training that maybe would allow them to go to college later. Maybe it's focused on medicine or maybe like an office job. And the top track is this is where you go to college, and maybe this is where you're more likely to do something like engineering or philosophy or literature, especially the more theoretical stuff. And kids would sort of test into that after middle school. You see some places have systems like this that have magnet schools. I went to a magnet middle and high school. It was a public school, but it was focused on fine arts instruction. That was very helpful for me, being in an environment where all the other kids wanted to be there, right? My teachers weren't focused on behavioral disruptions. They could sort of teach us all at the same level because we all were at a higher academic level. That I think is really useful for a lot of kids because you don't have one teacher trying to figure out how to teach a billion different ways. So I would do something like that and then invest way more in vocational instruction. And really, I would probably roll back a lot of federal student loan funding and make it a situation where if you want to take out a lot of money to go to college, you kind of have to prove to a bank that it's going to be a good idea. And that saves you and the government. But I think most importantly, it saves you a lot of time, right? It's like, if it is in fact a bad idea for you to take out $200,000 to get a dance therapy degree, it's probably a good idea that a bank tells you no, we won't fund this, right?
Right.
So that's probably what I would do a lot of. I could go on and on about the various policy proposals I would make. I think so much of what's happening in our school systems, particularly public schools, is really tragic, right? 2/3 of fourth graders can't read. And a lot of that is because we're not teaching them how to read, right? A lot of teachers don't actually know how to teach kids how to learn because they're not taught that in education schools. They're taught a lot of fluff.
Right. Well, and what you're talking about here is, really, to do the things that Queen Emma would like to do requires a complete revamping of the K-12 system at this point. Because we're not putting an emphasis on the things that need to be emphasized, and these kids are falling through the crack, like you said, with the behavioral stuff and all these other kind of things. That's why we homeschooled. I have 5 kids. We homeschooled all 5 of our kids. None of them have gone to college to become rocket scientists or anything else, but they can all. That was the first thing we did. What happened to instilling the love of learning into a child? Right? That's kind of seems to have been lost. That's what we tried to do. And my kids were reading it. All my kids were reading at college level in middle school and high, which is unheard of for the most part. But that's because we tried to develop that love of learning in them. That it seems we've lost some of those minor fundamentals.
Right. I think a lot of why this happens is that there's this idea that age is what determines academic ability and that we should be putting all kids of a similar age in the same learning environment. And what ends up happening is you have, about 1/3 of kids who are lost. What's happening is going way over their heads. They're going to feel stupid. They're going to hate school. They're going to lose their love of learning because they have no idea what's going on with the way the teacher is teaching. And then another third of kids who are bored out of their minds, who are maybe more likely to act out because of that, who are not paying attention because the level is way too low for them and they're way more advanced. And it's like, what if instead we separated those kids? And so the kids who are a little more behind get individualized instruction at their level. And so they like school because they don't feel stupid.
Right.
And then the kids who are way above actually get someone that's like, okay, you're in middle school and you're reading at college, here, read the classics, right? And so those kids are actually interested in learning because what's being presented to them is intellectually stimulating.
Right.
And I think this idea that no, all 6-year-olds should be taught the same things at the same time, this sort of factory way of looking at education,
right,
where also parents have no choice, right? That's one of the weird, I could say a lot about school choice. I think the idea that people with means should get to pick where they get to send their kids and people without means have to go to the neighborhood schools, no matter how bad they are for their kids' needs, is ridiculous. And so I think if we really expanded school choice, it would also both force schools to be better because they'll lose students unless they're attractive, but also it gives parents a sense of agency over their children's education.
No, it's the competition, right? Corey DeAngelis has been on the program, and we've talked a lot about backpack funding and things like that, where the money should follow the student instead of the other way around. Because now you've got, not only we've talked about the conglomerates of higher education, but, glomming money from the government and everything else. We've got schools doing exactly the same thing. There should be a competition. There should be competitiveness of ideas, of teaching styles and everything else. And that should all be part and parcel of it. And if you made the funding follow the student instead of just going straight to the school, that would give, parents the choice, and it would make sure that these schools are competing for those dollars in the best way possible. And that would eliminate a lot of the deadwood, the overhead, all this other kind of stuff that we've seen explode in the last 10, 15 years. And that would be a great way to get started.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I think there really is kind of this, let's say it's partially a myth, that the reason why poor performing schools do so badly is because they're underfunded. And that's not actually true. There are lots of schools that have humongous per pupil spending. I'm in DC, right here in DC. Terrible outcomes for our public education, but spend so much money. And then you have other places that spend way less per pupil and get better results. Another good example is Utah. I think it's Utah and Wyoming. It might be Wyoming and Colorado. I don't want to quote off the top of my head and say the wrong state, but there are two very similar Western states in the United States. One spends about $10,000 more per pupil. And despite this, both of those states basically have the same results. The kids test about just as well, and one state has a slightly higher poverty rate, but they're very similar demographically. It's like, okay, so if funding is used in the right way, it can create better results, but a lot of times funding just goes to waste. It just goes to sometimes cosmetic changes to school. Sometimes it just goes to teacher salaries, and it doesn't really improve the quality of the outcomes that you're getting.
So Emma Camp, Reason Magazine, our guest, if you were speaking to, we're cutting down to the last couple minutes here. If you were speaking to middle schoolers and high schoolers now and taking a look at your article here about fewer people going to college, and that's a good thing, what would you say to them? What would you say to those kids as they are getting into their formative years here, the end of their school career, the last 5 or 6 years? What would you say to them in regards to college and what they need to be looking at, et cetera?
I mean, I think that you should decide to go to college consciously. You shouldn't just do it because your parents want you to do it. You shouldn't just do it because you feel like you need to do it. You shouldn't just do it because the idea of going into kind of the independent adult world is scary. It should be something that you want to do and you have a very specific reason why you want to do it. And so I think that, there are lots of reasons why going to college can be a good idea, especially if you're going for a degree that is very likely to be a return on the investment that you make, right? If you really, really love learning and you have a very specific plan, that's great. If you aren't sure, if you're sort of waffling between, should I go to college, should I not go to college, you probably shouldn't go to college. And you should probably try to find an apprenticeship in a job that's interesting to you, or you should just get a job and sort of figure things out, right? Maybe you're not mature enough. Maybe you need to work behind the counter at a Starbucks for 4 years and then realize this is monotony. I don't want to do this. I need to go to a trade program that I really like, or no, I need to go to, engineering school or whatever.
Right.
But I think that this idea, if you're not sure, you should take the thousands of dollars in debt plunge is exactly the opposite of what we should be telling.
Well, you could go work at Starbucks right next to the guy who's got the 4-year philosophy degree. And
right, exactly. You don't want to get the English degree, and that will also help you, right? You could see other people, what happened to your peers that went to college, and then where are they ending up now, right?
Exactly. Emma Camp, Reason Magazine. You could find her at reason.com. Emma, thank you so much for coming on board this morning. Appreciate you being here. Hold the line. We'll be right back. We'll be to you for just a second here. Folks, we're out of time. We got more coming up. Hour 2 dead ahead. The Michael Duke Show. I mean, it's just so ironic. Yes, go work at a Starbucks or at a Safeway or something and work right next to the guy that's got the 4-year degree in underwater basket weaving or whatever. And, which he's so proud of, but still paying on. And he's 40 and got a ponytail, or whatever. I mean, come on, seriously. That's what we're facing today, right? I mean, how many degrees are there out there, Emma? I mean, this study, that study, gender fluidity, underwater basket weaving, and how to count hairs on frogs or something. I mean, there's so many different things, and it's just, they've expanded those programs because, well, we got to give them something to learn, right? Is it really useful and applicable? Probably not.
Right. Yeah. It's really, I think, not a good use of time for a lot of people. If you're, if your parents are footing the bill and you're not going to go out of this with any debt and you want to get a degree in underwater basket weaving, I guess knock yourself out.
Right.
But the thing is, most people are footing the bill themselves. And that's really where I think the trouble starts for so many people.
Yeah. Well, like we said, there's nothing wrong with college. It's just the question of, is it the solution for everything. And I think that's here you have a degree in philosophy and a degree in English, but you're not using either one of them. I guess English, arguably, you could say that was for your writing, but
I'm not doing much like Shakespeare analysis in my career.
Exactly. You don't do a whole lot of Othello in your pieces that you write out there. Final thoughts for you, Emma. I'll give you the last 2 minutes here, just in case there's something we didn't cover or any points on the article that I didn't hit on. I'd love to hear final thoughts here.
Yeah, I think really what I would hit on is that this idea that how you set your kid up for the best possible life. Because like all parents want good things for their kids. They want their kids to have an economically stable life where they're happy. Like in order to make your kid happy and for them to have a successful, good life, they have to go to college. They have to have a 4-year degree. Such a pernicious lie. And it sets so many people up to be just crippled with debt later in life. And so I think for the change to be, there are many paths to success. There are many paths to economic stability. And for some people, it is going to be college, but for a lot of people, it's going to be a trade school degree or something else. And also the idea that like not everybody needs to go to college, and that not being able to finish college, not wanting to finish college doesn't mean that you aren't a worthwhile person. And I think the messaging on this has just been completely messed up. But it does seem like people are starting to change course, especially as public opinion on is college worth it with how much it costs starting to change.
Yeah, no. And again, I think in the reality is still poking its head in on, trades and the lack of, the demand for those kind of skilled jobs and things like that. And kind of the reality of, people putting out these lists to say, here are the top 10, pay scales for these kind of professions, none of which require a college degree. And people are shocked because, again, they've been told the big lie of you're only going to succeed if you go to college. And they're seeing people in the trades making triple, $100,000, $150,000 a year. And they're like, wow, I didn't even know you could do that. I had no idea. And so we do need to educate kids early on that these are options. If they like working with their hands, if they like building, if they like the creative side of things, then there are other options rather than just going and sitting in a classroom for 4 years, being told, do what you're told, and you'll get out with a degree and a load of debt, and you'll probably never use it again. That's the challenge there.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Emma, I really appreciate you coming on board, and I would love to talk to you again in the future. If I can reserve myself to text you occasionally on these kind of topics, I'd love to have you back on the program.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to be back.
Yeah, I've got a whole stable now between you and JD Tuchili and Eric Boehm and Jacob Solomon. We'll have a reason week one of these weeks.
Collecting your basket of reasoners.
I'm collecting all the reason people to come talk to me. I love having conversations with you guys because I appreciate what you do. I appreciate all the writing and what you guys put out there. Reason is my go-to place every morning where I go glom onto all my ideas that I can agree to disagree with. That's what I like to see. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for coming on board, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you so much. Emma Camp, Reason Magazine, our guest here this morning on the Michael Duke Show. All right. Let's go back up here. Does Emma have kids? No, she doesn't have kids. Some of the best times, this is Harold. Some of the best times was in college. Great experience. Still lots of great friends. Well, but unless, every kid going to college just for the experience and making friends, that's a pretty expensive proposition if it's not something that's really right for you. College is not bad. It's just not for everyone. That's the thing. It's not bad. It's, it's just not for everyone. And it shouldn't be the solution to, the answer to every problem, supposedly, because we know it's not. Layla makes an interesting comment about trades. She goes, the downside to going to the trades is how really hard it is on your body. I knew far too many people who are 20 to 15 years from retirement. They worked at construction workers or nurses. They got hurt of the job and can't work in that trade anymore because their minds were never trained to be learners. They can't shift to another career that uses their brain. And I think that's part of what she was talking about, finding that love of learning, training people, where they're at. Yeah, there are people that get hurt in their jobs that can't perform it anymore. But overall, the trades are still being underserved, and we need to be cognizant of that, and the fact that many of these kids would probably love to do that, be in a direct on-the-job apprenticeship program rather than collecting, $150, $200,000 in debt for a degree that they are not interested in and will never do anything with. Okay. Okay. Going through here. My father is 57 and still working construction through the winters and mining every summer. Yeah, it happens. People ask me if I support the university. I tell them it helped make me the conservative legislator I am today, says Rob. No, college is not bad. That's not what I'm saying. I went into telecom, says Richard, second generation lower 48 with no college, took a buyout 2 years ago after 30 years, left with a pension, was making $70K a year. So glad I didn't waste a nickel on college. Yes. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, many of these kids can go do that. Welcome back to the program. It is the Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Hi, how are you? It's hour 2 of the big radio show. We got talking with Emma Camp there, and I ran right over the top of the hour. Don't tell anybody. It's hour 2, and we're ready to go. You guys ready to dive into this? We were just debating, about college. There is a place. Absolutely, we need to have colleges and universities here in America, because those institutes of higher learning are definitely important for certain things. I think the mistake is that when we said everybody has to go no matter what, otherwise you're not going to be successful. I think that's the biggest challenge, because that's not we know it's not true. We know it's arguably not true that that's what we need. Some people, again, love the trades. They love working with their hands. They love very specific, their minds work in a very specific way. And we need those things. We still need people to, wire our houses, weld our pipes, work on our cars, do all those kind of things. Those are all things that make society, move forward. And it's not you're not less because you're an electrician versus a guy working at 7-Eleven who's got a college degree. I don't think it less of either one of them. One of them decided to do one thing, one of them decided to do something else. That doesn't mean that they're any less, but in the minds of many folks, that is, they would look down on the guy who comes in and fixes your plumbing, or look down on the guy who comes in and fixes your wiring problem, whereas the guy who's got the 4-year college degree, he's definitely going to be successful, even though he's, serving a latte or something at a Starbucks. I mean, or maybe he's using that degree for something like an accounting thing. I mean, there is nothing wrong with college. What is wrong is telling everyone that they absolutely have to be part of it. And I think that's the biggest challenge here. All right, look, let's jump into this. Phone lines are open today. I'm going to open up the phone lines and we can talk about this or any of the other topics that we've got going on in hour 2. I'd love to hear some counterpoint. Layla was just saying in the chat room earlier, that the trades are great, but she said the downside is how hard it is on your body. She said she knows many people who are 10 to 15 years from retirement that worked as construction workers or nurses, and they got hurt on the job and can't work at that trade anymore because their minds were never trained to be learners. They can't shift to another career that uses their brain. And yes, I'm sure that there are those instances out there. That's why I said early on, I mean, this is going to require, I think, a fundamental shift in the K through 12 segment as well, because you've got to help these kids develop a love of learning right? You've got to help develop them into critical thinkers and giving them that love of learning. So if something does happen to them, that they can, creatively find a way out of it. If you're a nurse that gets hurt on the job or whatever, maybe you can do medical coding. If you're a construction worker, maybe you can do some consulting or some design or something like that. Some of those things that may not require the 4-year college degree, but they are in your in your bailiwick because you have
All participants are mute.
you've decided to jump into a different vein of it, or you've been forced to. At least there's something that you're familiar with. All right, let's jump over to the phones and see what you have to say this morning. 907-433-3150. The Michael Duke Show. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Michael. This is Jason calling from Fairbanks, Alaska.
Good morning, Jason. What's on your mind, sir?
Well, this is right up my alley because a lot of the things that Emma spoke of, I lived through. I'm a native of Miami, Florida, but we had owned a second house in northern Georgia, right near the North Carolina border. I finished high school there and went to college there too. And they did do that. They divided the classes up into A class, B class, and C class, depending on the academic tracking of the students. And it did work. I mean, there were some classes that were common to all of them, like English, literature, some of the basic math courses. But other than that, we were given courses that were specific to each of those categories. And also, when I went to college, college in that area called Truett-McConnell, about 20 miles away from Hiawassee, near where we lived, they also offered college courses to high school students at night. And I took advantage of those, and that caused a positive social pressure in that my parents, since they were doing the driving, there was a definite pressure at home. You better do good on these courses since we're paying to drive you back and forth between home and Truett-McConnell. And I did do quite well in them. It was college geometry, college analytic geometry, college algebra, and college computer science. And that college, they made some extra money on the side doing that, but I learned a lot doing that too. And that's something colleges could do also. And then later, after my father died, we moved back to Miami, and I finished college at Miami-Dade Community College, and they did exactly the same thing, where they would academically track the students, and those who were behind, they had remedial courses, but they were quick. They didn't teach them as if they were going to, go through a 4-year or a 6-year degree to become a master of mathematics or something like that. And in other words, it works. What she was talking about, and this was only in the 1980s. I graduated high school in 1984 and graduated from Miami-Dade in 1989.
Right. No, I mean, I think you're 100% right, and I think again, looking at where the students are, in mentally in their minds, how good a student they are for certain subjects, what they find, what they're passionate about. I think all those things need to be taken into account. And if they're better served going to an art course or to a trade course or to VOTEC or something else, or to college, that those tracks should be laid out by the time you're in, early high school. You should kind of know, you as a parent should kind of know which track your child is going to be taking, and help them develop that. And again, develop the love of learning along the way.
Yes, and also it's not just it's just something that parents need to get involved with, because there's so many homes where there are few, if any, books at all. Whereas my parents, they made sure our house was full of books, for all 6 of us kids, and they never played this game as, well, Daddy knows everything. If I had a question for my mother or father and they didn't know the answer, they said, well, I don't know the answer, but I know where we can find out. And we'd look it up in the encyclopedia, and if it wasn't in there, I'd say, well, let's go over to Grapeland Heights Library, and we'd look it up in the the encyclopedias or other books there.
Right.
And in other words, they paid attention to our questions. They didn't just say, oh, I don't know, don't worry about it,
right,
that kind of thing. And so, I mean, a lot of it is on the parents too, because a lot of parents have this, I don't know if it's even a majority, but a lot of them have this idea that it's the teacher's job to teach the kids. And And that is true to an extent, but it has to start in the home. That's where the love of learning begins.
Right. No, and I agree. And I think that's what we've talked about on the program here. Part of the problem with K through 12 is parents, in some ways, some parents have abdicated their responsibility to teach their own children and to develop that love of learning in them. And they're saying, oh, it's their job. I don't have to worry about it. That's what they get paid for.
Right.
And the answer is no. That's just, everything is just supplementary. You should be teaching your kids and giving them that love of learning. And if you could teach your kids of only one thing, just to read well, so that they could go and discover the things that they're interested in, I think that would be a boon for sure. All right.
I did learn to read well before I went to just one more thing too, which is connected directly to this, and that is I was totally against this at the time, but having had to do it, I'm now glad I did it. Part of the college curriculum I took, we all had to take the equivalent, in addition to what we were taking at Miami-Dade, was the equivalent of a 1-year liberal arts degree. It was, kind of needed in among the other courses. And at the time, I was totally against it, saying, well, I want to be an engineer. What do I have to take this stuff for? But you know what? I'm glad now I took it, because it has a positive cultural effect, because kids were, including myself, were learning how this society came to be, through the ancient times, the Renaissance, and modern times. And although it may not seem to have an immediate positive effect, over time it does. And I think a lot of the political problems we're having today with the wokeism, I think, would not have happened had that been taught more to the kids who are what my age was then today.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, Jason. Well, thank you so much for your call. I appreciate you ringing us up this morning and talking with us. Thanks for calling in. Let's go over to the next call here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Carlene.
Good morning, Carlene. What's on your mind?
Emma's talk with us, and I took notes on last Thursday, the 27th, on the Tony Perkins show. Congressman Mary Miller was being interviewed, and she mentioned that Randy Weingarten, the president of the teachers union, the AFT, opposes standardized testing. So I'm thinking that this would affect going to the bank and getting college loans or student loans. And also, to add to Jason's story, my father divorced us when I was 3 and my brothers were 2 and 1. And my mother worked 3 jobs to support us, no help from anybody. And the state, nobody. She just worked. But perhaps she did it on credit, a small bookcase with a book of knowledge, Lands and People, Science and Health, children's classics, medical books, and then one great big family Bible, gold, with the picture of Jesus on the front. My mother wasn't there. I taught my little brothers how to read, but those really affected us. I'm sure she bought that on credit, but I'm not an educated person, but I've continued to learn my whole life.
Right. Well, and that's the love of learning, right? I mean, that's the love of learning. My parents there were lots of bookshelves of Time Life books and different things of histories, and we never had an encyclopedia. Well, maybe we did. We had part of an encyclopedia collection, but I mean, I remember just poring over those books about Americana, about Greek history, World War II, all these different books that were out there. And that was, I mean, I'd love to dive down into those things and take a look at, obviously well before the internet, just to learn different stuff. I just loved the stories of what was going on and how things came to be. And that's part of that love of learning and instilling. I bought my kids the classics, like all the classic novels. I think Barnes and Noble's had a series that was called The Classics. There was like 25 or 26 books, and I bought them all. So kids could read, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Walden, and just all these different books from different points of view, different topics and styles. I think that is important for those kids to learn. And like I said, all of my kids ended up reading at a very high level early on because it was something that they just loved to do. And I'm happy to see it. And I'm happy to see that, happy to hear that, you got kind of a similar education, because, your mom was willing to go out on a limb and put those books in there.
I still have dreams of that 400-foot house over on Mission Road, that there's an artesian well in the middle of the room. It was just amazing.
Crazy stuff. Well, Carlene, sorry, go ahead. Thank you, Carlene. I appreciate you coming on board this morning. All right, we're up against the break. Let's not bonk this one up, shall we? Appreciate you guys coming in. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show continues. We got some more headlines, and we'll open up the phones, keep the phones open, I guess I should say. So what about you? Did you go to college? And are you using your degree? Did you encourage your kids to go to college? Did you insist that they go to college? And what's the success rate there? Again, nothing wrong with college. I think what's wrong is when you absolutely force everyone into that mold when they may or may not be ready for it. What are your thoughts? 907-433-3150, The Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes,
allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Wow. Embarrassed myself. I done run right over the top of the hour coming back into this. This is such a fascinating topic to me, though. It really is, because again, and no shade to my parents at all, but I mean, I remember them. My dad, especially. My dad's a graduate from the UAF, and he said, that was what had to happen. You need a college degree. You need to do those things. And as much as I respected and admired my dad, I got there and I was like, that's just, it's just not for me. It was just not for me. And, I love, if I was not doing radio, and doing radio and doing advertising and stuff like that, which I love because of the creative aspect of it. If I was not doing that, I'd probably be doing something with my hands, because I love to tinker. I love to weld. I love how things work, right? I mean, I still remember my dad was mad at me one time because he had a tape deck that wouldn't work. It was a really high-end tape deck and it wasn't working. And so I took it all apart. Oh, somebody was unhappy. I took it all apart. Now I put it all back together. Still didn't work, but I was trying to figure out how to fix it and I couldn't fix it. But I was able to put it all back together. But I remember he was so mad because I took that thing apart. But I've been fascinated about how things work, how, what makes them go. And I just love that, anyway. I just find this is a very interesting thing. Tawny says the military is how I obtained my degree. Well, that's great. So the benefits, obviously, of the military, the GI Bill was an amazing thing for many, many folks. Career tracking, Leela says, career tracking in school makes the problem of not being a learner worse, not better. I mean, I could see that, because then it tends to shuffle the slower learners into the bottom half of the pool. How can we fix that? How can we fix that, Leela? How can we instill a love of learning, or, get that learning going for people who are not as quick to pick things up? How are we able to fix that? I don't know. Nothing requires a 4-year degree other than people's stipulations and expectations. Yeah, I agree. I agree totally. And you're starting to see that now where many places that required a 4-year degree, any 4-year degree, it wasn't even like a 4-year degree. I love that. You'd see the job description or whatever, and the requirements are a 4-year degree. It didn't stipulate what it could have been, again, underwater basket weaving or blended gender studies or whatever it was that you wanted to, put. They just wanted to see that you could stick with something. But you're seeing more and more jobs where they're dropping that 4-year degree requirement because, they can make it happen. Frank says, this is Frank's, I think, comment back to Layla. Frank says, carpal tunnel, lower back issues, blood circulation, eye issues, all real hazards of office occupations as well. Yeah, I mean, there's problems in any of those situations for sure. Yeah. All right, let me go over to the phones. There's one line on hold. Let's get the name and where they're calling from, and then we'll jump back onto the radio. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, good morning, Willie out here in Quinnipiac.
Oh, hey, Willie, hold the line here. We'll be right back to you, okay? You're going to be first up in the queue. We'll talk with you here in just a hot second. Willie in Quinnipiac. Going through here. Good morning. The German, I'm going to star this one to come back to here in a little bit. We're going to continue. The Michael Luke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Melody says, I have a 6th grader, avid reader who reading at the must be the 11th grade level. The 11th grade level. Yeah, that's what I love. Teach them to read while they're young, and they will fill their minds with goodness. Here we go. Okay, continuing now, this Monday edition of the Michael Duke Show. I hope you guys are ready for a great week. It's going to be a great week. I guarantee it. I mean, I'm just, in my mind, I'm wishing a great week for you. We're talking about education. We just talked with Emma Camp from Risa Magazine in hour 1 about how college enrollment is down and why that's a good thing. And basically what she's saying is the split out to trade schools and voc ed schools and things like that are definitely more helpful to a lot of people than going and getting a 4-year degree and going into tremendous debt for something that you'll never use. Willie is listening to us out in Quinnipiac on the interwebs, and he has called us up this morning. And let's see what he has to say. Good morning, Willie. What's on your mind?
Oh, good morning. A couple of little items here. I'm getting tons of feedback, so if I stutter or stop, that's what it is. I'm trying to talk through it. First off, I really enjoyed listening to Emma, and what I see out here in the bush is they build a $30 million school in the middle of nowhere in a village for the kids, and there's no home ec, there's no shop class, and I really believe it's because those types of teachers figured out that there's a lot more money to be made by actually going hands-on and twisting wrenches or going to work cooking somewhere what there is hanging around for shop classes. So the least practical place to prepare a kid for nothing but college is out here in the bush, because these kids aren't tuned into it. They're tuned into subsistence living, fixing their own snow goes and whatever. But anyway, my main interest here today is we're hearing all about sales taxes in the legislature. And once the governor starts pushing a sales tax, I know that they're actually pretty real for a change. And I'm going, don't give me a 1%, don't give me a 2%, give me a 3% and sales tax, because in Bethel, Dillingham, they already have 6%ers. You might as well collect enough sales tax at one time that you can completely cover the deficit that they have going. The Senate originally started out with a $900 million deficit of just add-ons they wanted to add. The House is at over $600 million right now. The governor's 1% I read was a positive gain of maybe $460 million, and that was before they had to hire people, and it was just it's not a net gain. That's what I'm trying to say. So put enough money there that you can actually cover all of the proposed spendings. But don't talk to me about a sales tax or any other tax until you can tie it in with a guaranteed PFD that's constitutional. I need to see what I'm getting. In other words, like Lyman Hoffman, so famous for saying the PFD is first priority, and then you tax to the level of government spend. And that's exactly right, Lyman. One time I agree with him, Let's get our spending in line here. And let's also make sure that when you start telling somebody in Bethel or Dillingham that now you're paying 9% tax for everything that you're buying for whatever they don't exempt, you need to have a guarantee that they're getting something back out of this. Now, the Senate wants Lyman on. Never follows through. He talks out of both sides of his mouth. So what's he doing in the Senate right now, along with all of his other buddies? They're pushing this 25-75 PFD plan. Well, 25%, let's just say it's $4,000, which is kind of what they're calculating the PFD to be. That's a $1,000 PFD. You want to give me $1,000 PFD that's going to be statutory, which they can turn right around next year and change. No, that ain't cutting it, because $1,000 is not even going to cover the 3% that you're adding on out here. Gas in the villages right now runs anywhere from $7 to $12 a gallon.
Right.
That's people buy a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you, Willie. I mean, I think that if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. But before I see a tax, I definitely want to see, if nothing else, I want to see a spending cap. I want to see a limit on what you can spend to begin with, and I definitely would like to see a constitutionalizing of the PFD, whether that's the full PFD, which is what I really want, or even a 50-50 PFD, if that's what it takes. But this idea that they could continually move the needle and they could just slide their slider around and say, well, in the 75, 60, 80, 90, we could do whatever we want. I think that's part of the problem. Now, you're saying you're okay with the sales tax, but only if one of those other things happens, right?
Actually, what I've been writing to all the legislators, and the reason I'm talking right now is because I know they're transcribing all this in Juneau. Pretty handy. I'm getting to a whole lot of legislators right now besides our normal that listen to the program. But yes, I want to see what I'm asking for you'll see it on my posts on Facebook. If anybody sees that, post in a lot of places. I'm asking for a spending cap with teeth they actually have to follow, and I'm asking for a constitutional guarantee of some sort for the PFD. But the kicker that I want is, and I think that hands down, if they give this to the people to vote, and they're saying, look, we're going back to the statutory PFD, which we know we have the money. They're not supposed to be appropriated in the first place, so we know we have the money. It's them that have taken it away. They're the ones that don't have the money. We do, because it's supposed to already come straight from the corpus to us, right straight, bypass them. I want to see that, and if you know that your family is going to pull a full $4,000 a piece in your PFD, that 3% sales tax is not going to hurt you. In fact, you're going to be money ahead.
Right. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I could see that again. But again, I agree with you. And it's what I told Ben Carpenter and others earlier. I mean, if there was going to be a sales tax, okay, great. But the first thing that needs to pass is a spending cap, first and foremost, because otherwise, if you just give them the sales tax or any form of tax, sales tax, flat tax, whatever you want to talk about, we're not going to see that money back in our PFD because they'll just consume it and spend it. There has to be a stopgap. There has to be a governor on the spending. And in this case, a spending cap would be one, and then the constitutionally protected PFD would be the other, guaranteeing that we get that certain amount. And then they'll have to find, they'll either have to trim or do whatever else they need to do to live within their means. I agree with you.
Yep, and I believe that if they put a package that contains those three things, guaranteed PFD, constitutional PFD, a spending cap, and a 3% sales tax, which actually completely covers, according to, if you go with the governor's plan there of $460 million for 1%, you're looking at $1.25 billion in taxes, in sales tax revenue with a 3%, basically, if they put all that together, then take it to the people. Let the people vote. Let the people tax themselves.
Right.
If it's not a good plan, the people will tell you, no, go back to the drawing board, try it again.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. There's no amount of money that will ever slow them down when they want to spend. They're going to find money. They found $16 billion. That's why our CBR is down to barely over $1 billion.
Yeah.
Yet the law says, the Constitution says they have to replace $10 billion. When they hit the $10 billion mark, they were supposed to replace the funds in the CBR. They won't even do that.
Right.
In fact, what Lyman Hoffman's already talking about is with the gained revenue, they think they're going to make millions. Here we go again. We've heard this song before, back last year. They're going at 73 a barrel, and anything over 73 a barrel, that's going to be savings, extra money for the legislature. And yep, we can pay some bills next year with it. And what they can also do, according to Lyman Hoffman, is they can forward fund education with any new revenue.
Right.
There's no end.
Yeah, there's no end in sight. There is no end in sight for their appetite of spending, Willie. I couldn't agree more. Hey, appreciate you calling in, my friend. Thanks for listening and thanks for being part of the show today. I appreciate that. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. We've been talking about, Willie was just talking about sales taxes and stuff, but before that, we were talking about college. And we were talking about there is a place for it, but should not be for everybody. What I used to call a lot of times on this program, the big lie. The big lie. Emily in the chat room on YouTube says, unfortunately, I've been disparaged for not having a college degree. I have occupational endorsements and a certificate in my field, but no associate or bachelor's degree. And Emily, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that's happened sometimes, because again, most people have been, sold the big lie that this is the only way that you'll be successful is if you have that college degree. But I know many people who have endorsements or certifications in their field that aren't college educated that, there is no disparagement. There is no looking down on them. Some people, Jeannie talks about how she had her full and used her college degree for 30 years. And that's great. Again, I'm not saying that college is bad. I'm saying that we really need to start looking at this and analyzing it and asking ourselves, is it for everyone? I told my kids if they wanted to go to college, we'd figure out a way to pay for it. If they wanted to go to college, we'd figure something out and we'd do it. But that they weren't just going to college to find themselves. If they had a reason or something that they wanted to do, some career path that they wanted to take, we would find a way to do it. We'd make it happen. And yet they've all chosen to do something a little bit differently. I never said that they had to go. And hopefully I'm hoping that helped them. Again, coming out 4 years from now, couple $100,000 in debt, not a way that you really want to start off your employment career. You know what I mean? You don't really want to start off in the hole a couple $100,000. That's for sure. All right. Well, we are coming up on the break, so let's do that. One final segment dead ahead, and we'll see what you guys got to do. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Phone lines are open, 907-433-3150. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
What is that?
Common Sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
Okay. In the break, let me go back here. I set aside a couple of these comments because I wanted to highlight them. One was the one that I just highlighted. Let's see. Jeannie says, the German model has a lot of depth to it. Vocational or academic tracks. Graduate high school at 16. Choose 2 years of hospital or military service. Then you go to university or trade school on the government's dime. No music programs, no sports programs. All of the extracurricular activities are done, I think, done intramural. It's a fantastic system, but their taxes are 40%. Yeah, I mean, look, there's pros and cons to all this stuff. What I'd like to do is I'd like to look at some of the, I think what we need to do is look at some of the systems and pick and choose. Use the grocery store method, right? We're not going to import the German system altogether because I think, quite honestly, it identifies those tracks way too young. They're identifying tracks in like grade school, right? I think a lot of kids are still growing and learning how to learn. I don't think that you should be, trying to help kids into specific tracks until they're in their teens, probably in their early high school career. It makes it difficult for sure to try and separate some of those things out. But like I said, I think we need to pick out the pieces from each of the different systems that works and move forward from there. That's my thought. Although, I mean, you could just homeschool them all and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. Jerica says, I have a certificate in business management and accounting. It's the highest degree in my family, and it's absolutely useless to me because the only part of it that was new to me after helping my dad run his printing company starting as his secretary at 8 years old was his accounting stuff. And I decided I hated accounting and taxes, so I just hire somebody for that now. Yeah, I mean, again, how tough would it be to go get a 4-year degree somewhere and then realize that I don't know how tough it would be to do 4 years of this. You realize you hated what you got the degree. You hated doing what you got the degree in. That's just crazy. Tawny says, when I graduated, there was a gentleman we called a professional student. He was getting a degree in outdoor studies after 8+ years. I mean, there's people in there that just keep going all the time. Jerica said, I knew someone like that. She was in her late 30s in the 90s and had been in college since she graduated from high school. A career student. You don't have to pay on your student loans if you're still a student. Is that the answer? Just remain a student the whole time? Pamela says it's because college degrees have become dog whistles for wokeism. The colleges are not teaching effective workforce development like the trades are. They are teaching social cultural constructs at the tune of $100,000 a year. People are sick of it. I think there is something to that. I don't know if it's all that, but I agree that, they're teaching about these social cultural constructs all the time instead of actually teaching people, how to think and, critically think and to be, in the workforce and things like that. I mean, the trade schools are focused on that because they're trying to train the next generation of workers for what they've got going on. Not surprising. Herder says, did not translate directly into a career path for me, but looking back on it all, there was much benefit in stretching the mind in many ways that required the work to become literate. In that, most of what I enjoyed most had no end in making a living from it. I just wanted to learn and experience. At least back then, one could actually work and pay most of the way through. I mean, that's the thing. If all I could do all day was read and get information and learn new things, to me, that would be amazing. I love to learn. I love to think about new things and philosophies and, I love all that. How can I make a living out of it? I don't know. I mean, I use a lot of what I read in the show, but so I suppose you could argue that I'm making a living out of it that way. How do you make a full-time living out of it? That's the thing there right now. Okay. Looking, I say, I worked and paid my way through, graduated without any debt, thankfully. However, nearly all the jobs I've had since graduation are related to my field of study. And that's great, David, because that's, again, aren't related. He just said aren't related to my field of study. So he's, again, proving out that axiom that I was talking about from 20 years ago, where 80% of the people who graduate never get a job in their field of study. That's tough. That's tough. Okay. So there we go. When I go to see a doctor, I hope they're educated. Well, yeah, we hope so. Again, I'm not saying that there's not a place for any of those things. I'm saying it's not for everybody. That's what I'm saying. That's the difference. Okay. We got to go. We're going to jump back into it here. The Michael Dukes Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Got one line on hold. I see you there, caller. I'll be right to you. Let's get to it. Now. Okay. Let's continue on, shall we? One final segment of the show today. I still got a couple of headlines, but we're taking phone calls in the meanwhile because I enjoy that. I enjoy talking to you. Let's go over and see what you have to say. We'll jump to here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good morning, Michael. This is Jeff up here in the interior.
Morning, Jeff. What's on your mind?
Well, having worked in the trades, worked behind some design engineers, and more than one time I've scratched my head wondering, what were they thinking? So just because you got a degree doesn't necessarily mean you have common sense.
Well, I mean, that's true. Ask anybody who's ever tried to change out the spark plugs on a mid-'80s Corvette. Yeah, I'm here.
Did I lose you?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm here. I muted myself for you for a second. Yeah, ask anybody who's tried to change out the spark plugs on a mid-'80s Corvette about how engineers are, so practical. You got to damn near jack the engine out of the engine well to be able to get to the spark plugs. So, I mean, yeah, I'm with you on that. Like sometimes, it does happen. There's common sense, and then there's uncommon sense, right? I mean, when it comes down to it, but there's a place for that, right? I mean, engineers definitely need to go to college. They need to have the higher math. They need to have to understand all that stuff, but it shouldn't be a requirement for and quite honestly, not everybody should be encouraged to go, right, Jeff?
Absolutely. You can have all the design engineers you want, but if you don't have somebody to bend the conduit, pull the wires, pour the concrete, what good is it?
Yeah, I was having a conversation about 2 weeks ago with a friend of mine who works at a major aircraft manufacturer in Seattle. You can do the math on that one. And he said, it's just astonishing how some of these engineers are like, they were supposed to put some kind of warning sticker or something on something, and they're like, oh, it needs to just go inside here. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to get inside there? This box has already been manufactured. Well, and he said, yeah, these are the engineers. They're like, okay, you needed to put this on the inside, but you didn't tell us that before we assembled it, kind of thing. So it does happen. It does happen. There's the theoretical and then there's the practical. I think many of us are more on the practical side of things. So, all right, Jeff. Well, thank you for your call. I appreciate you calling in.
Have a good day.
All right, let's go over here. We'll take the next call. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Fairbanks. This is Charles. I wonder if it'd be crazy conspiracy to suggest a connection between the failure of banks in the U.S. and crowning some chump in England at the end of the week here.
You think that the crowning of Prince Charles has something to do with the bank failures in the U.S.? Okay, I guess Charles has had his say. Okay, I don't think that there's. I mean, that was like random thought number 312, but it's okay. It's okay. 907-433-3150, 907-433-3150. Let me remind you, of course, that today's program was brought to you by your friends over there at Satellite West. You can find them at satellitewest.com. From Chignik to Chugiak, from Mirror Lake to Metlakatla, from Minchumina to Minto. Wherever you are in the state of Alaska, they can help you stay connected with the technology, whether it's via text message or phone calls, send an email or surfing the internet. Satellite West has got you covered, and they've got a bunch of local dealers that would love to help you out, including Radar Alaska down on the Spit in Homer, just one of their many dealers across the state. Make sure you go check them out over there at satellitewest.com. We want to say thank you to them for being part of the program today and of course, helping to bring it to you each and every day. All right. What are some of the opportunities today for public testimony? What is the legislature going to be working on today? Let me lay some rundown here for you on some of the things that are going to be up. Again, this is where things start to get hot and heavy. We're down to the last just over 2 weeks. We're 17 days away from the end of the session. Does that mean that they're going to get out and stay out? Unknown at this point, whether or not the governor will call special session. I guess a lot of it depends on what his vetoes are and everything. But let me tell you what we have coming down today. House Finance has got two bills in front of it, including HB 66 and HB 28. One is the about controlled substances and good time deductions for, I think, time spent in prison. That's going to be at 1:30 today. Also, in the same hearing, there's going to be HB 28, which is access to marijuana conviction records. That's going to be the other one. I got a couple lines on hold here. I'm going to be to you real quick, caller, so just hold the line. Also today at 1:30 in Senate Finance is the oil and gas production tax, the income tax bill. That is SB 114. That's going on today at 1:30. SB 84 in Senate Judiciary is moving forward. That's a bill about money transmission and virtual currency at 1:30. At 1:30 in Labor and Commerce, there's the SB 116 about associate and professional counselors. At 3:30 in Education is the employment tax for education facilities bill, SB 132. And also in Education in that same hearing is going to be SB 56, which is the Alaska Performance Scholarship Eligibility Bill, SB 56. So that's what's all going on today. We got more coming up tomorrow as well. As I said, now is going to be the busy time for many of these things. If you want to sound off on those, you could do so. The LIO, probably your best bet on that. Let's go over to the phones and see what you have to say. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, Jim in Fairbanks.
Good morning, Jim.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to offer one thing. When you were talking about the graduation of people in college and so forth and so on, 20 years ago when we had almost 5,000 degrees given out every year at the university system. And we only were producing about a little less than 1,500 jobs in the state of Alaska that required a degree. So it appeared to me at that time, and I imagine it's the same today, is that we're either educating a bunch of people to leave the state, or we are spending a lot of money in a lot of waste in this triple university system that we have. So anyway, just offering that.
All right, Jim. Well, thanks for your thought. I mean, 5,000 for 1,500 jobs, that definitely seems like it's a little backwards, but I'd be interested to know what the number is today. Thank you, Jim, for your...
Yeah, I would be too.
Yeah.
You betcha. All right.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you calling in. 907-433-3150 over here. Good morning. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Randy in Fairbanks.
Morning,
hello,
Randy.
Michael. I just heard on the radio talk again about, constitutionalizing the PFD. And as you know, as I've mentioned before, I'm against that. But also, I think people may have the wrong impression a little bit about the PFD and touching the PFD, because the other day on the radio, I heard someone saying to the effect that a cut in the PFD is a tax, and it's similar to the federal withholding tax on a person's paycheck. And I wanted to point out that it's completely different from that, because when the federal government withholds taxes from your paycheck, what they're doing is they're taking away your individually owned money, because your paycheck is money that you have earned and belongs to you even before the company has written it out and sent it to your mailbox or whatever. And then the government comes and takes a portion of that before you even get it, but it's your money individually because you created it and you earned it. Whereas in the case of the PFD, it is not, it has never been, in the case of money that's in the government that might be destined, some of it being destined for the PFD, none of it is individually owned. It's owned by all of us in common and collectively. And the only part that's individually owned is the actual money that is in the check that you got your name on. Then that becomes your individually owned money. And so a cut in the PFD, the money that's cut, was never individually owned by you. It was something government had that is collectively owned by all of us.
See, and that's where. So first of all, I'm the one that made that comment, and I was using it as an example of money being taken before you ever see it. I wasn't saying it was exactly like the withholding tax. I was saying the mechanism or the way it's taken is similar. But I'm going to take issue with what you're saying, because again, the PFD, the way the PFD was set up, was that was Alaskans' share of the oil wealth. The way the PFD is set up, the 50% of the 5-year rolling average of the fund, that is Alaskans' money. That, if you go back and read the minutes and read what they're talking about, that is Alaskans' share of the money. Yes, it is in one big bucket, so we all own it, but anybody that applies, that is their portion of the money. So for you to say that's just government money, they should be able to do with whatever they want, that's not correct. And it is a tax. They've taken the money from you, yes, before you've received it. That's what makes it similar to a withholding tax. But that is the people's money. I know that you don't want it to be. I know that you say that is just all government funds and they can do with it what they want. But again, if you go back and read the minutes of the formation of the permanent fund and the speeches and what they talked about on the floor and what Hammond's vision was, that's what it was for. It was for Alaskans to have their fair share of the oil wealth, and it is their money. The government was never, in fact, up until 2016, 2015, 2016, it was never even an appropriation. It was just a shall transfer, right? This is money that just shall be transferred. It is the people's money. I know you want to say it's not, but that's not the truth. That's not how it was factored. That's not how it was put together.
Well, it's all our money, and it all goes to the Alaskan people, whether it's in services and infrastructure or cash checks, but it's all got to fit within a balanced budget. That's my point.
Well, but you're saying that the balanced budget is going to come because you give them the money. That's your other argument. Just give them more money, they'll balance the budget. And that's not what the framers intended. It wasn't for money for services or anything else. Randy, I appreciate your call, but we're out of time. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. All right, my friends. Well, it was a good show today. I really enjoyed Emma Camp coming on. And she had some good points. I really enjoyed that. Maybe we should do some more educational stuff. Working on getting some other guests in as well this week. And we'll see what we can come up with. I'm working on more Alaskan artists or authors. That's the other thing I'm working on. Anyway, appreciate you guys being here. We will see you on Tuesday. That's tomorrow. Tomorrow morning. Weekly top 3, Chris Story. It's all there. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Be kind, love one another, live well.
Goodbye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.